Today I'll be teaching you step by step how to make 5 super quick and easy Christmas bows. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. Hello, Stillwater's friends. How are you today? Come on in. Welcome, welcome. You guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Christmas is just around the corner. So now is a great time for me to teach you some of my favorite super simple Christmas bow making methods. Let me just take a quick minute to welcome anyone new here to the channel. Stillwater's Wreath Designs is all about DIY wreath and door swag tutorials. We upload new tutorials every single week, and so if that's something that you really enjoy, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and join us. And for my friends who have been here on the channel for a while, I so appreciate you. Welcome back. You guys, I will leave a full materials and tools list for you below in the description of this video so that you can recreate any of these bows if you would like to do so. You're just going to need your choice of Christmas themed ribbon, or any ribbon, guys. We're calling these Christmas bows. However, you can certainly just follow this recipe for any time of year. You're also going to need a ruler or some way to measure your ribbon, some standard pipe cleaners that are color coordinated with your ribbon, a good pair of scissors, and your hot glue gun. So just a little ribbon 101, guys. You know, when it comes to bow making, you really want to ensure that the quality of your ribbon is good. And I wish I could tell you that there's a specific store or online website that always has fantastic ribbon, but the bottom line is every store, every website has a great amount of great ribbon and also ribbon that is not so great. So here's what I can just tell you in summary. The more see-through and satiny the ribbon is, the more floppy it's going to be, and therefore your bows aren't going to maintain their shape as nicely as you may want them to. And you always, always, always want to use wired ribbon so that your bows maintain their shape. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and dive into our bow tutorials. All right, guys, so let's dive into bow number 1. I've just grabbed two 2.5-inch wide ribbons. This is going to be a simpler bow. Ideally, I would place these on gifts, smaller lanterns, or as ornaments for my tree. So we're going to start out with the first ribbon. If you can see that, I'm not sure if the camera's capturing that. It's actually got a nice, cute, fuzzy edge, but this is 2.5 inches in width. And with this ribbon type, we're going to make 2 loops and 2 bows. You can measure your ribbon with your cutting mat or a standard ruler. For the purposes of this particular bow, we'll use the ruler. So I'm going to start out with 8-inch tails. And where I see that 8-inch mark, guys, let me just roll out some ribbon here. I'm going to scrunch and gather and just kind of pinch. So now we've got our 8-inch tail. And my left hand is going to be my holding hand and my right hand my working hand. So I'm holding that 8-inch pinch mark that we made, and then I'm going to twist, a hard twist right between my fingers where I'm holding our ribbon, because we always want that pretty side out. So we've got 8-inch tails, and we're going to make 4-inch loops. And to ensure you have a 4-inch loop, you're going to measure out to 8 inches again, and then just fold that guy over into your hand, just like so. And once again, we're going to pinch and gather underneath our 2 fingers. So we've just made loop number 1. We're going to give that a hard, hard pinch underneath our thumb. Again, so pretty side is out. We're going to measure to the 8-inch mark. Again, not looking for perfection. No one's going to be measuring your loops and tails. Fold that over into your hand. And so now we've just made 2 loops with our ribbon. You can hold them up together like this and marry them to make sure that they're basically the same length. And we need 1 more tail. So we're just going to come back to our ruler, Put our pinching fingers at the beginning spot of our ruler, find that 8-inch mark, and cut off the ribbon. Now, if you are not new to bow making, you could hold this in your hand and just continue to layer our next ribbon choice right on top. But if you're new to bow making, that can be tricky. So I've just grabbed a standard pipe cleaner. I folded it into a V, and I'm going to use this as my holder for my bow. So I'm just going to tie that guy a couple of tight twists right around the center. To hold our first bow, and we're going to set that off to the side. And now we're going to repeat the exact same thing. However, we're going to make both our tails and our loops an inch shorter than the first ribbon. So this time, I'm just going to get some of my ribbon unrolled here so it's nice and loose and easy to work with. I'm going to measure out to the 7-inch mark this time. And I'm going to pinch and gather that to make my first tail. And I'll put that in my left hand. I'm going to give that a hard twist. This time we'll be measuring 7-inch pieces for our loop, which will turn into a 3.5-inch loop once we're finished. And once we've identified that 7-inch mark, I'll hold that with my finger, fold that guy over, and pinch and pleat that underneath my thumb. Give it a hard twist, pretty side out. We'll do the same thing, come out to that 7-inch mark, give it a pinch and pleat, fold that guy over, place it underneath our thumb. I'm going to marry those two loops up together to make sure they're the same length, and they are. And we're going to cut off our tail again at 7 inches. And again, guys, you know, this is just approximate. I promise you nobody's ever going to be measuring. All right. So now we're going to keep that guy held tightly in our hand and bring that first bow that we made back. We're going to gently untwist. Pull that guy off there. We're going to sit bow number 2 right on top. Make sure my legs are going the right way. We're going to take this pipe cleaner again, wrap it right around our bow stack. And give that guy 2 or 3 tight twists to secure our bow. Now I'm going to hold the center of my bow in my left hand and just pull those tails down like so. And then I'm going to dovetail all 4 of my tails. To dovetail, you're just going to fold your ribbon in half like so. Grab your scissors and come down on the folded side about 1 inch. Cut up diagonally to the corner of that ribbon. And then when you open that, you've got this nice, pretty V shape. That's called a dovetail. So we're going to do that to all of the tails, cutting on the folded side, diagonally up to the corner. And because our ribbon is a wire, guys, it's going to hold our shape. So I like to just take my fingers, run it over those tails to give them a little bit of a curvature. And now we'll just fluff out our loops, and all I do is put my hand in those loops, open them up. This is called fluffing your bow, guys. And we have just made our first Christmas bow. How cute is that? All right, let's move on to our second bow. Let me show you the 3 different types of ribbon we'll be using for this tutorial. I've got a 4-inch wide black and white buffalo check, a 2.5-inch wide red and black buffalo check with these cute glitter snowflakes, and a solid 1.5-inch red glitter. We're going to start with the 4.5 inch. And for this bow, guys, you're definitely going to need your glue gun. So have that heated up and ready to go. And so for the 4.5 inch wide ribbon, we're going to need one piece cut at 20 inches. You can make these bigger or smaller based on where you're placing your bow and your preference. We're going to turn this piece of ribbon upside down. We're going to fold this in on itself so that the ribbon overlaps by about, a 1/4 inch or so. And you're just going to put a solid strip of glue all the way down this side of the ribbon, nearly to the edge. Fold your ribbon over so that it's laying right on top of that glue. And then just press that guy in place. If you don't have a rubber finger like I'm using here, guys, just use your scissors or basically anything other than your finger to push that guy down. And then we're going to set that off to the side. Next up, we're going to use the 2.5 inch ribbon, and we're going to cut this piece at 18 inches in length. And you just need a single piece. We're going to do the exact same thing, so flip that guy over, fold your ribbon in, run a strip of glue right along that edge from nearly end to end. Fold your ribbon over on top of itself and press that guy down. And we'll set this loop off to the side. You're going to want a standard 12 inch pipe cleaner that coordinates in colors. Fold that guy into a loose V and set it off to the side. And we're on to our last ribbon, the 1.5 inch glitter ribbon. For this ribbon, guys, we're going to make a 12 inch tail. We're going to pinch that in our fingers like we did earlier. Give that a hard twist. And we're going to want 3.5 inch loops, so therefore we'll measure at 7. So you're going to measure at 7, find that 7 inch mark, fold that over into your hand. We're making 2 loops here, guys. Give that a hard twist underneath your finger. Make another 3.5 inch loop. You can measure, I just eyeballed. Make sure those ends marry up so that you know that your loops are the same size. We're going to measure another 12 inch tail. Cut that guy off. And now we're going to hold this in our hand and we're going to measure a 20 inch piece. So there's 12. I need to come to that 8. We're going to cut off that at 20 inches. Just fold that guy in half, like so, just to find that center point. Then that crease or that line will be your center point. Just give it a little pinch. Stick that in the back of your bow, like so. And then we'll take our pipe cleaner and wrap that around our ribbon, giving it a couple of tight twists to hold that guy in place. We're going to pull all 4 of those ribbon tails down. So that extra piece of ribbon, guys, that we added to the back just gave us 2 extra tails without the loops. And we're going to dovetail the ends of our ribbon. So I'm going to fold the ribbon tail in half, come down about 1 inch on the folded side, and then cut up diagonally to the corner for that nice pretty dovetail. And we'll do that to all 4 of our ribbon tails. So now we'll set the red bow off to the side and bring our loops back into place. You're going to want the glued side or that seam side towards the back. And we're basically just going to layer our smaller loop on top of the larger loop, centering right on top of that. And then in the middle of your ribbon stack, you can fold it in half if you need to Find that center crease. We're going to scrunch and gather, scrunch and gather, scrunch and gather our bow. And it's a little bit clunky, guys. Just bear with the process. Then you're going to take your loopy bow that we made and add that right on top. Flip that guy over. And then with our pipe cleaner, give that several tight twists. 3 or 4 is about all you need. Just make it as tight as you can. And we're not going to cut off that pipe cleaner because this is how you or your customer can attach your bows to your tree or wherever they're going. So now I'm going to hold our bow in the center, pull all of our tails down like so. And then I'm going to open up the loops, wake those guys up, bring them to life. This is a really good bow, guys, for your tree, your lanterns, your wreaths, and your gifts. Look how nice and poofy that bow is. It's so stinking cute. So just picture that nestled into your Christmas tree or on your wreath or door swag. Last but not least, you can either leave your tails as they are and let them flow wherever you're adding them, or you can curl them. To curl ribbon tails, I just use a cardboard insert that came from an old roll of deco mesh. You can basically use anything cylindrical like this. And because it's wire, guys, it's going to hold the shape you want it to. So kind of like a curling iron, you just wrap that around the insert, twirl it towards the center of the bow, and release. So typically my preference is to do a couple of them a little bit looser and a couple of them a little bit tighter, just so that they fall at different lengths, but that's totally personal preference. Then you can just pull on them a little bit so that they're hanging the way that you want them to. And we've just created our glued loop bow with curling tails. All right, guys, on to the third bow. So I've just grabbed a handful of different types of 1.5 inch ribbon. So I've got the solid red glitter, the solid green glitter, I've got a red and white stripe glitter, and then I've got this cute Santa ribbon. They're all 1.5 inches wide. For this particular bow, guys, I recommend that you use a width of not wider than 1.5 inches. You could use more narrow as well. I'm actually also going to use this unwired 5/8 inch green and peppermint striped ribbon. So for this particular bow, guys, you're going to want 8 to 10 total pieces of your 1.5 inch ribbon. So for this particular bow, I'm going to cut 2 pieces of the red, 2 of the green, 2 of the red and white striped, and 4 of the Santa for a total of 10. So obviously the more ribbon types you choose, the less cuts you'll have. However many you have, you want 10 total pieces of the 1.5 inch ribbon. So let's go ahead and get those cut real quickly at 8 inches in length. Let's speed ahead while we get these cut. Once you've got all 10 of your pieces of 1.5 inch ribbon cut at 8 inches in length, go ahead and trim your ends. You could either dovetail them or angle trim them. For this bow, I'm going to angle trim since we did the dovetail with the other pieces. So just go ahead and quickly dovetail or angle trim your ends, and then I'll meet you back here. Now that we have our ribbon strip ends trimmed, let's go ahead and grab that 5/8 inch ribbon. This is actually from the Dollar Tree. Kind of goes against my standard of always using wired ribbon, but for this particular messy bow, this works nicely. And we're going to want 2 pieces of each. We may add more, but let's start with 2 pieces of each, cut at 8 inches, and angle trim those ends, just like we did with the wider ribbon. While I'm cutting and trimming these last bits, guys, are there any bow tutorials or specific bow styles that you would like for me to do a tutorial on? Drop me a comment and let me know. And then you're just going to want a single standard pipe cleaner that matches in color with your ribbon pieces. And this is what's called a sloppy or messy bow, guys, and there's no loops. This is a really great beginner bow. We're going to actually layer these guys on top of one another. So choose your pattern, and we're just going to make X's. So we're just going to continue to make an X. I really like the Santa ribbon, so that's going to be the middle piece. Just like that. X, you're just making an X. One on top of the other. I think our 2 strips of each for this thinner ribbon will be okay. If you want it fuller, you can certainly add more. Perfect. Now we're going to take our pipe cleaner, just fold that guy in half loosely, so you've got this loose V that just identifies your center point. Now what we're going to do is pick up this X and kind of scrunch and gather. You got to put some oomph into it in the middle. And then we're going to wrap our pipe cleaner right around this bow stack. As you're cinching it up, just make sure that it doesn't get curled up or squirrely. Try to keep it flat. Just like before, guys, make it as tight as you can and then give it 2 or 3 spins. And again, you're going to leave that pipe cleaner on there so that you can use that to attach to wherever you want to place your bow. And we're just going to start pulling these tails of our X, going in all different kinds of direction. It matters not, as long as that pretty side is up. So just pull on it, jerk these tails around, and get them going in all different kinds of directions. Is that, guys, super fluffy, extra whimsical. This is a great bow to add to the top of a stocking or in your tree or on top of a gift and in your wreaths. Let's move on to the next. This next bow is going to just be a standard hand bow. I'm going to use a 2.5 inch wired ribbon and a 1.5 inch wired ribbon. You're also going to need a standard pipe cleaner, and like always, guys, fold that into a loose V and set it off to the side. I've got my scissors handy, and we're going to start with the 2.5 inch ribbon. This is definitely a bow that you can tweak based upon where you're going to be placing this. So for larger items, obviously make a larger bow, and for smaller placement, use a smaller bow. I'm going to make a 12-inch tail, kind of standard for an average size wreath. So I've just measured out my ribbon at 12 inches, and I'm going to pinch that. Let me roll out some of my ribbon here, guys. And then in my working hand, I'm going to give that a hard twist between my fingers because we need that to be pretty side out. And we want our loops to be 4-inch loops, so we need to measure out an 8-inch piece. Give that a pinch, and again, guys, not looking for perfection. Nobody's going to be measuring. Then take your loop and come back underneath your hand like so. Let's make sure that guy's still 4 inches, and it is. We're going to give that another hard pinch underneath our fingers. We're going to measure out 8 inches because we want that 4-inch loop. So when we fold it over, that 8 inches will turn into 4 inches. Place that underneath our finger. And we're actually going to make 4 loops with this time. Measure out 8 inches. Give that guy a pinch. Fold it over underneath our thumb and our working hand. Give that a hard twist. Measure out 8 inches. Give that a little pinch and fold it over. Make sure all of that's underneath our fingers. We'll measure out our 12-inch tail. Again, not looking for perfection. Nobody's going to be measuring. We've just made our first layer. So we've got 4 loops at 4 inches in length. And we've got our 2 12-inch tails. And so now I'm going to go on top of that with this 1.5-inch ribbon. Just going to unroll it a few rounds here so I've got loose ribbon to work with. And keep my scissors handy. We're going to measure out 10-inch tails. We're going to pinch that like we did before and lay that right on top. We're going to make 2 loops of this one, guys. So I'm going to pinch that underneath my hand. I'm going to measure out 6 inches for a 3-inch loop. Give that a pinch. Fold it over underneath my thumb. Give it a hard pinch underneath my thumb so it's pretty side out. We'll measure out to 6 inches again. Give that a pinch. Fold that underneath. So now we've got our 2 3-inch loops. And I'm going to give that a hard pinch underneath. And I'm going to make a teeny tiny loop. It's maybe 1 inch in length, just a single loop. And I'll show you why in a minute. And then we're going to measure out 12 inches again and cut off our ribbon. Grab that pipe cleaner, wrap that around the center of your bow stack. Make sure everything is still pretty side out, and give it 2 or 3 super duper tight twists. So now I'm going to hold on to the center of our bow. It's not pretty yet, guys, but we're going to change that. Pull all of our tails down. And you can either dovetail or angle trim those ends. I think I'm going to dovetail. So to dovetail, that's what a dovetail looks like. It's just a pretty V. And to do that, you just take your ribbon, fold it in half, grab your scissors, come down 1 inch or so on the folded side, and then cut up diagonally to that corner to give you that pretty dovetail. So now we've got all of our ends nice and trimmed. And with our 2.5 inch, we're just going to open those loops up and make them in kind of an X pattern. So we're opening them up and forming them into an X, just like so. Give yourself a couple minutes to get it just the way you want it. And then with our 1.5 inch ribbon loops, we're just going to let those go straight across. And then that middle single teeny loop we made, we're going to fluff it right in the center to basically just cover up that middle portion and be like that little, I call it a button bow. Making sure our tails are all pointed downwards. And we've just made a standard hand bow. All right, friends, on to the last one. The last bow we're going to make today in today's tutorial, guys, is the funky bow. This is a larger bow, so it is great for extra large wreaths or door swags, and it makes a great tree topper. I'm going to use 3 2.5 inch wide wired ribbons, and we're going to cut 3 pieces of each at 28 inches in length. So you could use 4 different ribbon types if you wanted, 2 different ribbon types, even a single ribbon type if that's your preference. Just make sure that whatever amount of variety you have in total, once you're finished, you will need 9 strips of 2.5-inch ribbon measured at 28 inches in length. So let's go ahead and get our ribbon strips cut, and I'll meet you back here. Now that we have all of our ribbon strips cut at 28 inches in length, we're going to angle cut our ends. You could also dovetail, and we're going to do that for every single strip of ribbon. Again, I'm going to angle cut, but you're welcome to dovetail. So let's trim up our ends, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got all of my ends trimmed, and I've grabbed my ruler and a standard pipe cleaner, and I'm going to, of course, fold that guy into a loose V to identify that center point and set it off to the side. And I'll scoot my strips of ribbon over. And let's start with creating, guys. This is actually a pretty easy bow. So we're going to take our first strip. We're going to fold that guy directly in half, just like so. And then we're going to take our ruler to make a 5-inch loop. So where that 5-inch mark is on our ruler, we're going to scrunch and gather into our hands, just like that. Then you're going to take one tail and give it a hard twist because we want that pretty side always out. And we're going to hold it in our hands, just like that. So we've got the loop at one end, our 2 tails pretty side out at the other end, and we've got that between our thumb and our pointer finger. And then we're going to move on to the next loop. You'll just want to stagger your colors back and forth for variety. So I'm going to fold this guy in half. I'm going to identify that 5-inch mark so that we have a 5-inch loop. And I'm going to pinch and gather that in my hand. This time I'm going to place that loop going in the opposite direction of the previous. And I'm going to take one of those tails and give it a hard twist. So that pretty side is always facing up. We've just added our second loop. We're going to move on to our third. Fold this guy in half. Lay that down by our ruler. Find that 5-inch mark. Give it a good pinch at the 5-inch mark. And you guessed it, we're going to reverse that direction again. So we've got our loop now facing towards the left and our tails to the right. We need to take that back tail and give it a nice hard twist underneath our thumb so it's pretty side out. So now that the pretty side is up, we're going to repeat that process and keep building upwards, making sure you always flip those tails so they're pretty side up, and then I'll meet you back here. Now that you've got this giant bow stack in your hands, friends, and your hand's probably a little sore, don't worry. We're on to the easy part at this point. Go ahead and grab that pipe cleaner, wrap that right around your ribbon stack. Kind of push down on those ribbons while you're tightening this. And you're going to give that, just like always, 3 or 4 tight twists, like so. And now it's time to fluff our bow. And so what we're going to do, just like our other bows, just takes a while longer because we've got larger loops. You're going to open those loops up, pull those tails to a V, a wide V. Open your next loop up, come across, and pull those tails. Open your next loop, come across, pull those tails. And do this all the way to the bottom of your bow. Just fluff, fluff, fluff. And just like that, we finished our funky bow. Look how beautiful and full this bow is, guys. You can follow this exact same recipe to make it much larger or much smaller, but using the 28-inch loops, this guy ends up being, gosh, I would say right under 12 inches in diameter and about 9 inches deep. So it definitely is a nice bougie bow. That's it for our Christmas bow tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed this video and creating with me today, friends. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It helps my little channel to grow. Thanks for spending time with me today. Happy crafting.